My son's wife used my credit card without asking, so I reported it stolen while she was on a shopping spree. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Granny's Tales. I'm Margaret. I'm 73 years old, and today I'm going to tell you about the day my daughter-in-law learned that this old lady isn't as helpless as she thought. You know, when I saw those police officers walking into that fancy boutique and my daughter-in-law's face go from smug satisfaction to pure panic, I have to admit, I felt a little satisfaction myself. But let me back up and tell you how we got to that glorious moment. For the past 15 years, ever since my son Michael married Jessica, I've been what you might call the family ATM. And honestly, I was happy to be. When they couldn't make their mortgage payment 3 years ago, who do you think they called? When little Emma needed braces, and they just couldn't swing it right now, who opened her checkbook? When their car broke down, when Jessica wanted to go back to school, when they needed a vacation because they were so stressed, Grandma Margaret was always there. Let me paint you a picture of just how generous I'd been. There was the $3,000 I gave them for a new car that turned out to be a down payment on a brand new SUV. There was the $1,500 for Emma's summer camp that I later found out was actually for Jessica's weekend spa retreat with her girlfriends. Don't even get me started on the $800 I gave them for emergency home repairs. That coincidentally happened the same week Jessica got her nails done, her hair highlighted, and bought 3 new outfits. I kept meticulous records, you see. Old habit from my teaching days. Every check, every cash gift, every emergency loan that was never paid back. By my count over the years, I'd given them just over $18,000. That's not pocket change for a retired teacher, folks. I'm not rich, mind you. I'm a retired school teacher living on my pension and Social Security, but I've been careful with my money my whole life. I taught 2nd grade for 38 years, and every month without fail, I put something aside. I own my little house, outright, a modest 3-bedroom that my late husband Frank and I bought in 1978. I've got a decent nest egg saved up, about $85,000 in various accounts. More importantly, I've got a good credit score and a credit card with a $5,000 limit for real emergencies. The thing is, I never minded helping. That's what family does, right? We take care of each other. When Michael was growing up, his father and I taught him about respect, about gratitude, about treating people, especially your elders, with kindness. Frank used to say, "Maggie, we're raising a man, not just a boy. Make sure he knows how to be grateful and how to give back." I thought those lessons stuck. I really did. Michael had been such a good kid. He'd brought me flowers on Mother's Day, remembered my birthday, called just to chat. Even in his 20s, before Jessica, he'd come over on Sundays just to have dinner and tell me about his week. I was wrong about those lessons sticking. It started small. Like these things always do, Jessica would make little comments about how I didn't understand modern parenting when I'd try to help with Emma. She'd roll her eyes when I'd share stories about my teaching days, muttering something about how things were different back then. I remember one particular incident that should have been a red flag. Emma, who was about 8 at the time, had been struggling with her reading. As a retired teacher, I offered to help. I'd taught hundreds of children to read over the years, and I had a whole box of materials and games that had worked wonders. But when I suggested it, Jessica actually laughed. "Oh, Margaret," she said, not even looking up from her phone. "They don't teach reading like that anymore. Everything's digital now. You wouldn't understand." The thing is, I'd kept up with educational methods. I'd volunteered at the school library for years after I retired. I knew about digital learning tools, but Jessica had already decided I was too old and out of touch to possibly help her daughter. Then there were the visits that weren't really visits. They'd stop by, but only when they needed something. A signature on a loan document. Money for this or that. Jessica would sit on her phone the entire time, barely acknowledging me, while Michael would fidget like he couldn't wait to leave. I started keeping track of these visits, too. In 15 visits over 6 months, they asked for money, or favors 12 times. The other 3 times, they were just dropping Emma off so they could go out, treating me like free babysitting. Don't get me wrong, I loved spending time with Emma. That little girl was the light of my life. But it stung to realize that I was only valuable to them as a resource, not as a person they actually wanted to spend time with. The real eye-opener came last Christmas. I'd spent weeks preparing, cooking all of Michael's favorite foods from when he was a boy. His father's secret, recipe pot roast, the green bean casserole he used to beg for, homemade apple pie with the lattice crust that took me 3 hours to make. I'd bought thoughtful gifts for everyone, including a beautiful necklace for Jessica that cost me more than I should have spent. $200 for a delicate gold chain with her birthstone that I'd seen her admiring in a shop window. You know what Abba got? A gift card to the grocery store. A $25 gift card to the grocery store. Jessica actually said, "We figured you'd appreciate something practical at your age." At my age. Like I was some doddering old woman who'd forgotten how to enjoy life. Like I didn't deserve something thoughtful or beautiful or personal. Like my only value was as someone who needed to buy groceries. I smiled and thanked them, but inside I felt like I'd been slapped. $25. I'd given them thousands over the years, and they gave me a $25 gift card that they probably got as a promotion somewhere. But the real last straw came 3 months ago. I'd been feeling under the weather. Nothing serious, just a bad cold that knocked me down for a week. You know how it is when you get older. What used to be a 2-day sniffle can really wipe you out. I had a fever, a terrible cough, and I was so tired I could barely get out of bed. I called Michael to see if maybe Jessica could pick up a few groceries for me. Nothing major, just some soup and bread, maybe some orange juice. I wasn't asking them to nurse me back to health or anything dramatic, just a simple favor that would have taken maybe 30 minutes out of their day. "Oh, Mom," he said, and I could hear Jessica in the background making exasperated noises. "Jessica's really busy with her yoga instructor certification right now. Can't you just order grocery delivery?" Now, I'm not completely helpless. I know how to use the internet, I have a smartphone, I can figure out grocery delivery. But that wasn't the point. The point was that I was sick, I'm his mother, and asking for a small favor shouldn't have been treated like I was asking them to donate a kidney. "I understand she's busy," I said, my voice hoarse from coughing. "But I just need a few things, and I really don't feel well enough to drive." "Mom, come on, you're not that sick. Besides, grocery delivery is so convenient these days. You should really try to be more independent. Independent. Like I hadn't been living independently for the 12 years since Frank died. Like I hadn't been taking care of myself, my house, my finances, and frequently their problems, all on my own." 2 days later, I found out from my neighbor Dorothy that Jessica had posted on Facebook about her exhausting day at the spa. The same day she was apparently too busy to help her sick mother-in-law with groceries. Dorothy showed me the post on her phone. Jessica at some fancy spa, getting a massage and a facial, talking about how she deserved this me time after her super stressful week. That's when I started paying closer attention to how they really saw me. I started noticing things I'd been ignoring or making excuses for, like how Jessica would answer her phone or check her messages when I was talking to her. How they'd make plans right in front of me without including me, even for family things like Emma's school plays or soccer games. How they'd cut visits short if something more important came up. I realized I'd become background furniture in their lives, useful when they needed something, invisible the rest of the time. The realization hit me like a slap in the face during a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. I'd gone to their house to drop off some cookies I'd made for Emma. Chocolate chip, her favorite, made from scratch with real butter and brown sugar the way my mother taught me. I still had a key from when I used to babysit regularly. Back, when they actually seemed to appreciate my help. I let myself in, calling out, "Hello," but got no answer. I figured they might be in the backyard, so I headed toward the kitchen to leave the cookies on the counter. That's when I heard Jessica's voice coming from the living room. I know, she was saying, and I could tell she was on the phone. But we won't have to worry about money much longer. She's getting older and Michael's an only child. The house alone is probably worth $300,000, plus whatever she's got saved up. I looked it up. Houses in her neighborhood are selling for crazy money these days. I froze in the hallway, my plate of cookies suddenly feeling heavy in my hands. "No, she's not sick or anything," Jessica continued. "But she's 73. How much longer can it really be? And Michael's been her only child since his sister moved to California. We just have to be patient and keep playing nice. Playing nice, that's what she called it. The best part is, she keeps giving us money anyway. Last month it was $500 for Emma's school supplies. Emma's in public school. What school supplies cost $500? But she just writes the check. It's like she wants to give her money away. Heard her laugh, and the sound made my stomach turn. I swear, sometimes I think she's getting senile. She probably won't even remember half the money she's given us. And if she does, what's she gonna do? We're family. She's not gonna cut us off. She was talking about me, about my death, about my money, about how I was apparently too stupid or too senile to notice they were using me. Like I was some inconvenience standing between her and a payday. I stood there in the hallway, holding my plate of cookies that I'd made with love for my granddaughter, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. This woman, who I'd helped and supported and treated like a daughter, was literally counting the days until I died so she could get her hands on my money. I heard her wrapping up the call. "Yeah, I should go. Michael will be home soon, and I don't want him to hear me talking about this. He still gets weird when I mention the inheritance stuff." I set those cookies on the hall table and left without saying a word, closing the door as quietly as I could. My hands were shaking as I got into my car. The drive home was a blur. I kept hearing her words. Playing nice. How much longer can it really be? She probably won't even remember. By the time I got home, the hurt had transformed into something else entirely. Cold, clear anger. That night I sat in my kitchen with a cup of tea and really thought about my situation. I wasn't some helpless old woman. I was a retired educator who'd managed a classroom of 30 kids for decades. I'd raised a son mostly on my own after my husband passed. I'd managed my finances carefully enough to own my home and have savings. I'd been playing the role of the sweet, giving grandmother for so long that I'd forgotten I was also a woman who didn't take nonsense from anyone. So I started making some calls. First, I called my bank and asked them to send me a detailed statement of every transaction on my account for the past 2 years. What I found was illuminating. The emergency car repair that cost me $1,200. Michael had posted pictures of his new golf clubs on Facebook that same week. The money for Emma's school supplies. Jessica had bought a $300 purse the next day. Then I called my lawyer, Harold, who'd been handling my affairs for years. "Harold," I said, "I need to make some changes to my will, and I need to understand my options for protecting my assets." Harold was thorough. He explained how I could set up trusts, how I could change beneficiaries, how I could protect myself from financial exploitation. He also suggested I might want to consider being more careful about who had access to my financial information. That's when I remembered giving Jessica my credit card information for emergencies 6 months ago. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Jessica called me on a Tuesday afternoon, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness I'd finally learned to recognize. "Hi, Margaret. I hope you're doing well. Listen, I hate to bother you, but we've got a bit of a situation. Emma's school is having a fundraiser, and they need payment by tomorrow. It's $200, and our account is a little tight right now because of the mortgage payment. Could you possibly help us out? I still have your credit card information from when you gave it to me for emergencies. Now, I happen to know that Emma's school doesn't do fundraisers in March. I volunteer in their library, remember? I also know that $200 is exactly what Jessica had been talking about, spending on a new designer handbag she'd shown me on her phone the week before. A Coach purse she'd been dying to have. But here's where it gets interesting. I also knew that Jessica had been planning what she called her big shopping day for weeks. She'd mentioned it several times, talking about all the stores she wanted to hit, all the things she wanted to buy once we get some extra money. She'd even joked about it being like Christmas in March. I'd been waiting for the right moment, and here it was, gift-wrapped and delivered to my door. But I played along perfectly. "Of course, dear," I said in my sweetest grandmother voice. "You go ahead and use the card. I trust you completely. What a wonderful mother you are, always thinking of Emma's education first." I could practically hear her smiling through the phone. "Oh, thank you so much, Margaret. You're the best. I'll probably run some errands after, maybe pick up a few things. For the house, too, if that's okay. I know how you worry about us having everything we need." "You do whatever you need to do, sweetheart. Take your time. Enjoy your day." "You're so understanding. I'll probably make a whole day of it, you know? Hit all the stores, maybe treat myself to lunch. I've been so stressed with everything lately." Perfect. The more she planned to spend, the better this would work. The minute I hung up, I called my credit card company. "Hi, this is Margaret Henderson. I need to report my credit card stolen." The customer service representative, a lovely young woman named Sarah, was very helpful. She asked me a few security questions, confirmed the last few transactions, which were all legitimate, and then asked when I'd noticed it was missing. "Just now," I said. "I went to use it and realized it wasn't in my wallet. I'm so worried. What if someone's been using it?" "Don't worry, Mrs. Henderson. I'm canceling the card immediately. Any charges made after this moment will be flagged as fraudulent. If anyone tries to use it, the merchant will be notified to contact the police if it's over a certain amount." "Oh my," I said, making sure to sound concerned. "What amount is that?" "For your card, anything over $50 will trigger an immediate alert and law enforcement notification." I almost smiled. Jessica had just told me she was planning to spend much more than $50. Then I sat back and waited. The customer service representative was very helpful. She canceled my card immediately and told me that any charges made on it after that moment would be flagged as fraudulent. She also said that if anyone tried to use it, the merchant would be notified to contact the police. Then I sat back and waited. I didn't have to wait long. According to my neighbor, who heard it from her daughter, who works at the mall, Jessica had quite the afternoon planned. She started at the department store, where she tried to buy a $150 perfume. Declined. She figured maybe she'd misheard the limit I'd given her, so she tried to buy a $75 scarf instead. Declined. Starting to panic, she went to the coffee shop to call me, but I let it go to voicemail. She left a frantic message. "Margaret, there's something wrong with your card. Can you call me back right away?" I didn't call back. By this time, she'd apparently decided that maybe she could fix whatever was wrong by trying smaller purchases. She went to the drugstore and tried to buy a $20 lipstick. Declined. She tried to buy a $5 pack of gum. Declined. That's when she made the mistake that I'd been hoping for. She went to the high-end boutique downtown, the one she'd been talking about for months, but could never afford. I guess she figured she'd try one more big purchase, hoping whatever was wrong with the card would magically fix itself. She picked out a $400 dress and confidently handed over my card. The sales associate ran it, frowned, and tried again. Then she stepped away and made a phone call. 2 minutes later, 2 police officers walked in. I got the call from Michael about an hour later. He was absolutely frantic. Mom, you have to help. Jessica's been arrested. They're saying she stole your credit card. You have to call them and tell them it's a mistake." "Oh my," I said, and I made sure to sound confused and elderly. "Arrested? What credit card?" "Your credit card. The one you gave her for emergencies." "Michael, honey, I never gave Jessica my credit card." Silence. "What? But she said—" "Would never give anyone my credit card, Michael. That would be very irresponsible of me. If someone has been using my card without permission, well, that's theft. But Mom, she's family." "Is she?" "Because family doesn't usually discuss how much money they'll inherit when I die. Family doesn't treat me like a personal ATM. Family doesn't lie about school fundraisers to steal money for designer handbags." Another long silence. You heard that?" "I hear a lot of things, Michael. I see a lot of things. I'm old, not stupid." Jessica spent 6 hours in jail before Michael could scrape together bail money, without my help for once. The charges were eventually dropped after I had a long conversation with the prosecutor. But not before Jessica had to do 40 hours of community service and attend a class on financial responsibility. More importantly, she had to face the reality that her actions had consequences. The family dinner that followed was illuminating. Jessica sat there, red-faced and quiet, while Michael tried to smooth things over. "Mom, I'm sure this was all just a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," I said, calmly cutting into my pot roast. "Jessica took my credit card information and used it without permission to buy personal items. That's theft. The only reason she's not facing criminal charges is because I chose to be generous. Again." I looked directly at Jessica. "But my generosity has limits, and you found them." Then I shared some news that I'd been saving for just this moment. "I've made some changes to my will," I announced. "I've set up a trust for Emma's education, money that can only be used for school expenses, managed by my lawyer. I've also arranged for my house to be sold when I pass, with the proceeds going to the children's hospital where I used to volunteer." Jessica's face went white. But we thought—" "You thought you'd inherit everything?" "Well, you thought wrong. I've worked too hard and saved too carefully to let it be wasted by people who see me as nothing more than a bank account with a pulse. That was 3 months ago. Things are different now. Jessica has been working part-time at a local retail store. Apparently, her perspective on money changed quite a bit after she had to work for it herself. She's also been much more polite to me, though I suspect that has more to do with fear than respect. Michael has been making an effort to have real conversations with me, not just the, "Hi, Mom, how are you, gotta go" phone calls I used to get. He's also been handling his own financial emergencies, and you know what? He's been managing just fine. As for me, I've been volunteering at the literacy center. I've joined a book club, and I've been taking watercolor classes. I'm actually busier now than I was when I was trying to solve everyone else's problems all the time. I still help Emma with her homework when she comes over, and I still make cookies for special occasions. But I'm not the family ATM anymore, and I'm certainly not the sweet, naive grandmother who can be taken advantage of. Here's what I learned from all this. Respect isn't something you get just because you're old or because you're family. Respect is something you earn, and more importantly, something you demand. I spent so many years being the nice grandmother, the one who never said no, never caused trouble, never stood up for herself. I thought that was love, but what I was really doing was teaching them that my feelings didn't matter, that my money was theirs for the taking, and that they could treat me however they wanted, as long as they needed something from me. That's not love. That's enabling. Real love sometimes means saying no. Real love sometimes means letting people face the consequences of their actions. Real love sometimes means making people uncomfortable when they're being disrespectful or hurtful. I'm still a grandmother who loves her family, but I'm also a woman who values herself, and I'm not going to apologize for that anymore. So that's my story. How this helpless old lady taught her daughter-in-law that actions have consequences, and family money isn't free money. Was I too harsh? Maybe. But you know what? I sleep better at night knowing that I'm not being taken advantage of. I have better relationships with the people who actually care about me, and I have a lot more money in my bank account. Sometimes you have to remind people that wisdom comes with age, and so does the ability to recognize when you're being played. What do you think? Have you ever had to lay down the law with entitled family members? Share your stories in the comments. I love hearing from people who've learned to stand up for themselves. And if you enjoyed this story of Grandmother Justice, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to Granny's Tales for more stories of family drama and elder empowerment, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future tales of wisdom and justice. Thanks for listening, and remember, don't underestimate Grandma.